No warning was issued. No countdown. No ultimatum. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps released a statement. Direct. Confidence. Final. For ballistic missiles have been fired at the USS Abraham Lincoln. Not aimed at. Not targeted. Fired at. Now think about what Abraham Lincoln actually is. It is not just a warship. It is a nuclear-powered floating city. Over 1,100 feet long. Roughly 5,500 people live, work, and operate inside it around the clock. Sailors, pilots, engineers, medics, intelligence officers. A complete command structure that never sleeps. It carries a full wing of aircraft, strike fighters, electronic warfare jets, surveillance planes, helicopters. It does not need a runway on land. It does not need permission from any country. It projects American military power anywhere on Earth. That is what it was built to do. And then the second voice entered the room. U.S. Central Command. Immediate. Official. The Lincoln was not hit. The missiles did not come close. The carrier continues to operate. Two governments. Two completely opposite statements. One very dangerous stretch of ocean. But here is the question that nobody in any official press conference will answer. If the Lincoln was never touched, why did it move over 1,000 kilometers away? Because that ship moved in silence, without explanation. And the distance it traveled tells you something that no official statement ever will. To understand what is really happening in these waters, you need to understand how this conflict began, how fast it escalated, and why one ship has become the most strategically significant symbol of this entire war. The operation launched in the early hours of Saturday, February 28, 2026. No speech came before it. No warning was broadcast. It began exactly the way serious military operations always begin. In darkness. With precision. With a scale that takes months to build and seconds to unleash. The United States and Israel launched a coordinated bombardment against Iran. Tomahawk cruise missiles from U.S. Navy warships positioned in the Arabian Sea. Atom's rockets from HIMARS artillery systems. The two stealth bombers striking hardened underground missile sites. Sites buried specifically to survive exactly this kind of attack. Within the first 12 hours, U.S. Central Command confirmed approximately 900 strikes had been conducted. Israeli aircraft added hundreds more on that same first day. Missile production facilities, Naval Command headquarters, IRGC command and control centers, air defense systems. The entire architecture of Iranian military power was being hit in real time. When you launch that many strikes that quickly, you are not sending a warning. You are attempting to break a system completely. And then came a confirmation that changed everything. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, was killed in the strikes. The war did not pause when that news broke. It accelerated. Because removing a leader does not end a conflict. It compresses the timeline. It forces desperate decisions before new command structures are stable. It turns strategy into survival. Now, the carrier. The USS Abraham Lincoln had been positioned in the region for weeks before Operation Epic Fury began. It was already inside a zone of contact before this war had a name. In early February, weeks before the first strike, one of its aircraft shot down an Iranian drone that approached the carrier aggressively. When the operation launched, the Lincoln was not a bystander. It was part of the opening blow. Its aircraft flew strike missions. Its escort ships fired cruise missiles. The Lincoln was fully inside this war from the very beginning. And then Iran answered. On March 1st, the IRGC issued a statement that went global within minutes. The USS Abraham Lincoln had been struck by 4 ballistic missiles. Not targeted, not fired upon. Struck. U.S. Central Command responded immediately. The Lincoln was not hit. The missiles launched did not come close. The Lincoln continues to launch aircraft in support of ongoing operations. Present tense. Operational. Business as usual. On the surface, it looked like a straightforward dispute between two governments. But serious analysts did not stop at the statements. They watched what happened next. Because in naval warfare, the first thing commanders protect is not their public image. It is their capability. Ships move when the threat picture changes, when the risk calculation shifts, when staying closer is no longer worth the cost of what could happen if something goes wrong. 4 days after that first claim, March 5th, Iran issued a second statement. This time the IRGC said the Abraham Lincoln, operating roughly 340 kilometers from Iran's maritime borders, had been struck again. Not by ballistic missiles this time, by naval drones. And following that second strike claim, the carrier and its escort destroyers repositioned, at speed, to a location roughly 1,000 kilometers away. U.S. Central Command did not confirm the drone strike, but U.S. Central Command did not deny the repositioning either. That silence, careful, deliberate, institutional, that silence is where the real story lives. Because here's the thing about distance in naval power. A carrier's position is not accidental. It is a message. A carrier operating 340 kilometers from Iranian waters is saying something specific. We are here. We are dominant. We can launch and recover aircraft faster than you can respond. The cost of challenging us is one you cannot survive. A carrier that moves to 1,000 kilometers away is saying something completely different. Even if every official statement insists the ship is fully operational. Even if video footage shows jets launching from the flight deck. The mathematics of distance cannot be hidden. Distance changes how many missions can be flown per day. Distance changes how long aircraft can stay over their targets. Distance changes search and rescue response times. Distance changes the entire operational calculation. Distance is a message. And that message says the calculation changed. Now, the drone claim. Iran's first claim involved ballistic missiles. U.S. Central Command denied it directly. Independent analysts found no credible evidence that those missiles struck the carrier. Videos claiming to show the Lincoln on fire were identified as fabricated and debunked quickly. But the March 5th drone claim was different, in a way that matters significantly. Naval drones are smaller, slower, lower radar signature. The kind of platform that hides inside cluttered sea lanes and noisy sensor environments. The kind of threat that can be jammed, spoofed, quietly intercepted, and leave nothing behind that the public can easily verify. That is exactly why both sides benefit from the ambiguity surrounding this claim. Iran benefits because the idea of a carrier being reachable is powerful, even if it remains unproven. The United States benefits because acknowledging even a near miss shifts deterrence calculations in every other theater around the world. A carrier is not just a weapon. It is a symbol, the physical embodiment of the assumption that American naval power cannot be threatened by regional forces. That assumption is load-bearing. It holds weight in every capital watching. Beijing, Moscow, Pyongyang. Every government that is calculating what Washington will and will not tolerate. Any crack in that image sends a signal far beyond this conflict. So both sides need you to believe them. Iran needs you to believe the carrier can be reached. America needs you to believe it cannot. And in the middle of that information war, the Lincoln moved. This is not a clean two-sided confrontation. It is a regional conflict spreading across airspace, ports, and critical shipping lanes. Israel absorbed strikes on major population centers. Gulf states experienced alerts, impacts, and emergency shutdowns. Embassies closed. Airports were disrupted. Commercial shipping slowed. And the Strait of Hormuz, the corridor that carries roughly 1/5 of the world's daily oil supply, became a test of nerve. Tankers waited outside the strait. Insurance rates climbed. A threat does not need to be carried out to cause damage. It only needs to be credible enough that people act as if it might be. A carrier battle group in these waters is not only about striking Iran. It is also about keeping that corridor psychologically open, signaling to shipping companies, to markets, to energy traders that the U.S. Navy still controls these sea lanes, which is exactly why the carrier's distance matters so much. 1,000 kilometers may still be within range for American air power, but it is also farther from the coastline, farther from the choke point, farther from the place where Iran can most effectively threaten the world's energy supply. From this point forward, the conflict moves in one of three directions. First, controlled attrition. Strikes continue. Retaliation continues. Damage accumulates on both sides. The strait stays technically open. Markets stay tense. The Lincoln keeps operating from a safer distance. Still launching. Still projecting power. But from further away than before. Second, command fracture. Iranian military networks degrade under continued strikes. Coordination weakens. But fractured command structures do not mean a safer environment. They mean unpredictable actors. Factions with access to missiles, mines, and drone swarms. Operating without unified central control. Third, full regional war. The strait closes as a measure of last resort. And the conversation stops being about price spikes and starts being about global supply shocks. The carrier's movement sits inside that decision tree. Here is what has been confirmed. The Lincoln is operational. Aircraft are launching. The ship has not been sunk. Here is also true. Iran claimed it struck the Lincoln, first with ballistic missiles, then with naval drones. After the second claim, the carrier repositioned from 340 kilometers off Iranian waters to roughly 1,000 kilometers away. U.S. Central Command denied the strike. U.S. Central Command did not explain the repositioning. A carrier that is completely unaffected does not need to move 1,000 kilometers. A carrier that moved 1,000 kilometers did so for a reason. And that reason, whatever it actually was, is precisely what neither side has chosen to explain. If Iran's claims are false, then the move looks like calculated caution under pressure. If Iran's claims are true, then the move is something far more significant. A moment when the most powerful symbol of American naval dominance quietly adjusted its posture. In the middle of a war, without telling anyone why. Either way, the distance is real. The repositioning is real. The silence around it is real. The Lincoln is still out there, still launching, still projecting power from further away than it was before. Iran is still claiming it reached what it was told could never be reached. And the Strait of Hormuz is still barely open. Somewhere between those facts. The most important story of this conflict is being written, not in press conferences, not in official statements, in the gap between what each side is willing to say and what the ocean already knows.